Well, hello there, lords and lasses. It's nice to see you all today. It's great to be seen. It's cold out here in my garage. I've got some things to show you today. We're going to try to identify most of the items in our Maker Take-Home Kit. The only things that we're not going to be spending a lot of time on are the materials that are going to be exclusive for the circuits activity without soldering, and then the circuit board activity we do with soldering. So we're going to hold off on those, but I thought I'd start with the pink insulation foam that many of you cut on the hot wire styrofoam cutter. The pink insulation foam is also called polystyrene foam. It comes in pink colors and blue, light blue. You would see it in Home Depot or Lowe's. It's a great insulator because if you look at it on a microscope, it's full of tiny little air bubble pockets. The more layers of air, the better the insulator. And the piece that we have is 1 inch. The 2-inch was really hard to get online. Take a look at that there. This is the 1-inch thick stuff. Right, this works great with sandpaper. We can sand this down really quick. You can coat this with a real thin layer of just white Elmer's glue and then stack layers on top. Press them down tight, put some masking tape around there so that they don't slip or slide while they dry. And in a couple hours, you can take the masking tape off, and something that's a big huge cube could be sanded down into a softball shape in minutes, right? And you keep sanding with different grades of sandpaper from 80 up to 120 to the finer stuff to 300. And you can sand this stuff so smooth that you don't even know what material is under there if in fact you were to paint it. So if I go back over here to look at some of these pictures, there's a mobile, hanging mobile, all made from that one chunk of foam that you see here. And not just cutting things out into cutting to the thickness it already is and cutting the two-dimensional shape out, but making things that are three-dimensional, right? A lot of times after people are done sanding it, they'll coat it with white glue before they paint it with acrylic paint. You could paint it with oil-based paints too, but acrylic is great in the classroom. People use this foam too for its insulation properties in things like Keep It Cool Challenge that goes with a lot of next-gen science standards about properties of matter and flow of energy through a system. Some cool examples of different things people have made. Done this design challenge in STEAM settings where the point was to incorporate design elements or design principles. Used it as a way to, often as in class, as a way to introduce different tools and machines and processes because the foam is more forgiving than wood, for example. And you can see somebody get ready to cut in the hot wire cutter. Always cut bigger and then sand down closer. It's just really great stuff. If you use craft wire or little chunks of hanger that have been cut with snips or toothpicks to hold multiple pieces together if you're trying to take individual components and build a sculpture out of it. It's some really great models. Sometimes these challenges had to be a functional prototype. Sometimes they had to be a static sculpture or a dynamic sculpture, something that's moving. Sometimes they'll let people incorporate other things in there, like embedding magnets inside or adding different structures and mechanisms for container systems. I think you get the point here, but it's just a great stuff. It's cheap. And a lot of people use it in construction jobs and then get rid of it. And their scraps are often big enough for students to use. So that's pink insulation foam, and you can cut that with your hot wire foam cutting wand. Let's see if I got that one here. Oopsies. Overhead. We can cut this with our hot wire wand. And just note that the nichrome wire that comes with the bow attachment is going to be thinner wire than the one that you used in our classroom. And so you just have to take your time with it and let it do the cutting. Don't pull too hard. And I think this tool might have a little light when it's turned on. I'm not sure. I'm going to take this one apart. But just know that, they heat up once they're plugged in. And if there's not an on-off switch, you're going to just have to assume that it's on. And we always want to put this over our cutting mat. When we drill, when we use hot glue or epoxy, or even the scratch-all, we always want to put a cutting mat underneath of us. What else do we got here? I think that's all I want to say about that foam at this time. Let's see if we should look at any other tools we got. I'm going to talk about foam core cutters now. This is the Craftworks foam core cutter, or Foamworks. And this one is a rabbit cutter. And so it does not come with blades. We still have to provide you with the blades. But you would take this screw off and pop it open, and two blades will pop in place. And the blades will stick out in this slot, and you'd barely be able to see them in there. But the idea is that we can take foam core or presentation board, right, like stuff used in the science fair. It's got paper on the top, paper on the back, and a layer of foam in the middle. We'll buy this in 3/16 inch thickness. We get it in different colors. We can't cut this with the foam core cutter, the hot wire cutter, because it's got paper around it. But we can use this with X-Acto knives and razors. Even though using any razor blade on foam is a sure way to dull it very fast. After a few passes through foam, a new razor blade is considered dull. But this changes the game for modeling with this. Now this tool does a rabbit edge I'm going to show you, but you can also get another tool that will cut down the surface of your board, and we'll take off the first layer of paper and cut through the foam, but not the bottom layer of paper. And with that tool, we can make a dado, or a slot, that other pieces can fit into. All right, so I've got another tool over here that does the same thing this one does. And I'm going to demonstrate that since I have this one put together with a blade in it. With this one, though, you have to make two passes. How cool is that? So just left behind a lip of paper. And now, when I put these edges together from one piece to another, you find the square edge there. Gives you a nice clean seam, right? And it also means that you have effectively 1, 2, 3, 4 surfaces touching each other when you glue up a corner, whereas normally you would just have them butted up there and you still see that gross edge sticking out, and only 2 surfaces bound together. Hopefully we'll do some more with foam core cuts later. But you can really do cool things with foam core and slice it up in ways that allow you to roll it up into nice cylinders without having creases come into the or cracks in the paper on the outside. All right, next thing I want to show you here is, how about our multi-hole punch, our leather punch tool. This is the Amazon Basics version. This will allow us to punch different size holes because it has this rotary attachment. And so I hold the tool firmly and I pull my finger here. And the first few times you pull it, it's new. I'm going to spin it around a couple times, break it in. All these different size holes, which is cool. Always better to use a hole punch or an awl than to put a hole through something with one of the blades on a scissor. And also notice you have this little locking feature here. If you feel like, oh, it won't fit in there, just gotta rock it a little bit. Get it to slide into that spot. Got a set of multi-purpose utility shears. I like Fisker, they're a nice brand. And by the way, all of these materials, the Amazon wish list that was created for them, I've shared the wish list with you, as well as a spreadsheet with each item individually laid out with its price and a link that you can click on to go back to Amazon. All right, so a pair of utility shears. I wouldn't cut something as thick as a hanger with these, even though you probably could, using this little notch down here if you wanted to. Always put things to the back, toward the fulcrum when we make cuts to get the most out of them. And you'll find that if you feel the tips of these, they may feel a little oily. Anything we have, any product we got in the kit, or anything that's manufactured, made of metal, is going to have a thin coat of oil put on it, right, to keep it from corroding or rusting. And so that is typical. Next, I'll pull out this C-clamp, pipe cutting clamp. Sometimes they call it a G-clamp. But if we have brass rods and tubing like we picked up, some of those are really thin. This will go down to 1/8 of an inch of a cut for a cut, and I think it goes up to 1 1/8 inches. But I'm going to open up the chuck here, turn this counterclockwise, and what it's got inside of it is this is a cutting wheel right here that spins, and then a rolling wheel with a dead wheel, and I've got a piece of pipe here. It's a piece of hollow tubing. Open this up so the tubing fits in there. Some PVC pipe. Alright, so now I'm going to tighten this up just enough that I could still freely spin this, but feel that it's doing something inside there. I can feel the resistance. Tighten a little more. Twisting, tighten, twist. There we go. And if we look close, we can see these little bits of plastic sticking off in there. They're called burrs. And if you want to clean the pipe out, you can take pop that piece out, and rotate that inside to clean the burrs. Alright, pretty cool. This will also work on a piece of copper pipe that you'd use in your plumbing in your bathroom or something. Right, next, take a look at the scratch-awl tool. Awl, which we can use with 2 hands to put a hole through a piece of paper or something else without using a scissor. I have a piece of material chucked up here in the chuck. Get a look at that. A block of wood. I put the portable bench vise out here and I set it up around this little tabletop I've got. Alright, so this is nice and tight. So if I'm going to drill something or cut something, instead of holding it in my hand, I need to have it in a bench vise, or I need to have it securely clamped to a table surface with a good clamp. And let's say I was going to drill a hole through here with my Fisker's drill. Alright, so this comes in the kit, and we didn't get them to, they didn't arrive in time. So we'll have you come back to pick these up with the junior hacksaw and the little miter box. But before I were to drill a hole in here, to make sure that my drill bit didn't move all around when I was trying to start the hole, I could take the scratch-aw and make a dent or a divot. You could do this in a piece of metal as well before you drill a hole. I've got my tool here, so I've already taken this one out of the box. Let's show you the parts. It came with a set of 4 drill bits, twist drill bits they're called. When you have multiple drill bits of different sizes that are sold together, they're called an index, a drill index. When I move the chuck around, you can see that the handle moves. So to loosen the chuck, I'm going to have to hold the handle securely so that it can't spin on me. And then I just twist the metal out here. And as I twist, the little teeth inside will come in or out. Here they come. So the chuck, and these are the teeth inside the chuck. You could put other bits in here. You could put a driver bit in here, like a Phillips head or a flathead. But because of the way you've got to be turning the handle, it's not really the best for driving screws. Make sure it's centered in there. Tighten it up. The races. All right. While I have this block in here, I'm going to slide it over to the side and show the junior hacksaw. Hacksaw blades have much smaller teeth on them. Right? The bigger teeth are for ripping through big pieces of wood, but the real fine teeth, especially when you can barely make them out, they just look like little bumps. You know, those are made for cutting harder materials like metal pipes. Right, so I wouldn't recommend using this on steel. You'd probably dull the blade if you made too many cuts on a copper pipe. But hollow tubing, styrofoam, soft woods. This is actually a hardwood. It's called balsa wood, but it's not hard at all. You can pick it apart with your fingernail. It's just a hardwood because it comes from a tree with leaves, a deciduous tree. Softwoods come from conifers or pine trees of pine with needles. Before I make any cut anywhere, this is not the safety course, of course, but it's a good practice to mark something with a pencil before you make a cut. And since I've got this chucked up, you'll notice I put my tool across the back edge here, and I make a couple cuts toward myself first. A few passes backward. There we go. And then I'm going to stand up to finish the rest of the cut. And cut from front to back and use the whole saw. Your saw is going to come with a miter box that lets you hook it up to the edge of the table and hold on to something when you make a cut and cut on different angles. It's really cool. Alright, so there's your portable bent vise. Here's your cutting mat. This is our self-healing cutting mat. We're going to take it out of the package, of course. You know, this one's pretty thin, But you could definitely be cutting into this and cut hard with X-Acto razors, and you'll think, oh, it's starting to cut through there. It's called self-healing because it looks like it's pulled back together once you pull the knife out. And I would want to keep this underneath my work no matter what I'm doing. If I'm soldering and I've got my soldering iron on the stand, you know, if the soldering iron falls off the stand, it can burn the surface of this and not my kitchen tabletop. And if you find that this thing is sliding around underneath of you in any shape, any way, shape, or form, you want to secure it. You can put some double-sided tape underneath, or you could take some blue masking tape, some of that painter's tape, and just tape the outsides, the perimeter of your cutting mat down to your tabletop. Here we have a safety ruler. If we're using X-Acto razors up against a ruler, it's got to be metal. It can't be a wooden ruler because the blade will cut into that. It's got a non-skid plastic insert in here, rubber insert, which is awesome. Otherwise, we'd want to see cork underneath of here. And we can flip this up. So it makes like a straight edge or a T edge. And the idea here is that your fingers can go behind this and be shielded when you make cuts. You'll see a safety video on paper cutting techniques and safety with razor blades in an upcoming module. I'll just grab what's next here. This is your syringe cylinder kit. No needles, just the syringe, just the plunger and the tube, the cylinder. Sometimes these will be sold as plunger and cylinder kits. They're not always sold as syringes or hydraulic pneumatic. Hydraulic meaning with liquids, pneumatic meaning with air or gas. And so we've got hydraulic activities. People will fill up one cylinder with water and fill up the line with water. But the idea is you could have a tube going through here any length that you want. We see these in control systems activities where people are trying to create motion somewhere or automate something. They are used in design challenges where there's different size cylinders, right? And so you have different amounts of force going through and pressure and volumes of liquid when people are integrating different standards. But what's cool is you could glue things to the ends of these. And let's see if one's down. Let's have the other one pulled up. With air, they work fine, but with a liquid in there and a little food coloring so you could see the liquids moving around, it works even better. So the idea is that when I push the one, the other one will pop out. And with fluids, the motion is, or pneumatics, the motion is smoother. It also comes with one of these fittings that you could pop onto the end. That makes it convenient to attach this to a dowel rod or some other thing that might swing and hinge. And tech ed classes, engineering, this might fall under structures and mechanisms or control systems. And that's that. Next, we've got your wire cutters, wire strippers. It does both. Let me flip this around here. It's got the cutter part of the tool down here. That's the cutter, right? And this is the stripper part. You can move this red little tongue here in and out just to keep your place if you're trying to put it up to a certain millimeter size strip. I always like to strip something off so it's at least the size of my first knuckle, the tip of my finger, about an inch. And it's one-handed. So first we can cut the wire down here, and then we bring it up here to strip it. I'll demonstrate that for you real quick. Take this old charger wire, come inside here, cut, and then one hand, drop it, separated. So we'll have much more fun with this later when we do our circuits activity, the first one with the design challenge where there will not be any soldering involved. Okay, what other tools do we need to go over? I mean, some of these things are self-explanatory, like, Model Magic. It's got instructions on the back about how long it takes to harden, but we know that it's great stuff. It's non-toxic. We've got it in a bunch of different colors. We're going to be using the Model Magic for next week's module with brainstorming and making an animated GIF, like a claymation out of some creature that we create. We could use Play-Doh for that or anything else. Making Play-Doh is always great. There's 20 different recipes out there. But just maybe hold on to the Model Magic for that activity. We've got some different pieces of wood. If you have a piece of wood that's just round, we call that a dowel rod, if it's just a round piece. If it's square like this, we call it square stock. These wood strips. And we can cut these with a junior hacksaw. And if they look like dowel rods but they're pointy on one end, then you've got a skewer. What's next here? Okay, let me show you something with batteries. When you get your battery pack out in the future, when we use them, you've got them in a 5-pack like this, and they come sealed, vacuum sealed. A good little trick to keep the rest from shorting out, because you go put them back in a bag loose, and they can end up touching one end to another and losing charge or something like that, is to take them and snap them or shear them across from each other, right, like this. This way the packaging still stays together, so I can keep these 3 and put them back away, and then use these 2. All right, we got some 5-minute epoxy in there. Epoxy you can buy, it takes hours to set, but this is 5-minute epoxy. It's for quick jobs. And so it's got syringe cylinders here, 2 of them. One side's got the epoxy resin, and the other one is the hardener. And so near the 2 shall meet, because once they do, and you mix them up, you have 5 minutes until it turns into like a solid plastic. It will be transparent. You can see through it when it dries. It might look like it has a little bit of a yellowish amber tint to it. But when you first shoot this stuff out, when you open it up, the little tip that breaks off here, you hold on to that, because after you use it, you can put the tip back on. All right? So you would hold the plunger and you'd extrude out some stuff. One side's going to come out a little faster than the other. Just keep the plunger even, because one side is more viscous than the other. The resin itself is really thick. And then squeeze it out, and then before you put it away, grab the plunger and just suck backward and pull an air bubble up through here a little bit so that the tip isn't dripping off there. All right? I wear gloves. I would have students wear gloves, of course, as well as being near air ventilation or under an air hood. It is a chemical reaction. You will feel it get warm if you're holding on to a piece of paper or something, for example, that you're mixing on. But I'd want to hold a stick, not a toothpick, but like a popsicle stick, so that you can whip this stuff around for about a minute and mix it up. And as you're whipping it, you'll see it turn. It won't be opaque, but it'll look kind of cloudy, like you won't be able to see through it when it's first going through the reaction. And like I said, it dries clear. All right, so this will stick to anything, anything. And if the surface you have is like something that's super smooth, we would take like a little piece of sandpaper, even fine sandpaper, and just kind of rough the surface up before we apply this, so that it gives us the best chance of adhering to the surface. Okay, what else do we got? The magnets. We've got Keychain Hardware in here. I think you picked this up at the same table, Keychain Hardware, as you did over with the magnets. We all know about ceramic magnets, but these neodymium magnets are even stronger. You really got to slide them to get them apart. They're really hard to just pull apart, especially when you're holding on to two of them. All right. But you know, even by itself, one of these magnets is so strong. And they will rust if you get them wet. Just keep them out of water. But cool, because they're so little and so powerful, we can embed them in things and use them for, you know, like as a latch to hold something shut or to keep something in place. People will also put something underneath of a piece of material. I saw one of you in class where you made them stick across your thumb. You know, I saw a challenge once where somebody designed this ice skating rink, and it was a point of purchase display where they had to you know, have some scene that would be going on that would attract somebody to come in to buy something in a store. And so they had all these figure skaters, and it was a piece of white whiteboard material, right? Whiteboard, that's funny. Whiteboards, you can get a whole sheet of whiteboard, a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet at Home Depot for $18. It's just basic melamine with a coating of whatever that white stuff is. It won't be magnetic, but you get a whole sheet of it for $20. The magnetic whiteboards have a strip of sheet metal behind them that schools purchase, you know, and they sell them for $1,000. But we had a chunk of that whiteboard, and we had figure skaters or you know, these characters on top, and then underneath there were magnets hooked up to mechanisms that were moving around, but it looked like the people were freely skating across the ice. I love magnets. I've got them all over the place. If you look across my back wall, back there, it's kind of dark now, but if you look back there, I've got anything that's sharp inside my house, right out here in my garage, anything I don't want any kids to be able to come across, or things I don't want to have going in my fingers if I'm raking through my tool drawers, I put up on magnet strips across the back. Even the big rectangular ceramic magnets that you have, one of those by itself is strong enough to hold a wrench up to a wall. Pretty cool. All right. So I'm just trying to think if there's, you know, I got some other stuff laying around here, but like I said, we're using those things for the circuits activities. I think I just have one more thing I want to show you, and then if I think I need to show something else, I'll make another video up. But this is a thin sheet of, I would say plywood, but there's no plies. Like this is like one ply that you would see in a sheet of plywood. And it's pretty thin, and I believe that this is either alder wood or Baltic birch. Baltic birch, I think it is. And both of those are woods that you can buy in thin sheeting like this that make a nice contrast when you engrave on them. So when a laser cutter engraves on a piece of material, it's not always going to come up, the engraving will not always come up in a, you know, in a shade or a color that's in contrast to the other piece of material, and that's what you want, you know. I had a piece of, what was I doing? It's like cutting out a bathroom sink, you know, and the leftover pieces, when I cut the hole out from the sink, not from granite. Ah, man, what's it called? It's escaped me. I'll remember it later. You all know, somebody knows what I'm talking about. But that white countertop material, Corian, that's it, Corian, it's white. When you engrave on it, it just still looks the color white, except you could feel that it's been engraved, right, when you run your fingers over it. So it doesn't give any contrast, right? This type of wood is great, especially alder, because when you engrave it, the engraving shows up like a really dark color up against the lighter surface of the material. And we'll talk a lot more about laser cutters later, but this sheet of material everybody has one. This means you could take this up with you to the makerspace or to your own laser cutter, and if nothing else, you could utilize this to practice cutting and engraving, and maybe even use some of your keychain hardware with it. Right, so the other things in there like sticky back Velcro and little odds and ends. If I think I need to make a second video, I will. But this is the stuff I wanted you to be able to identify what the things are in the kit, and just give you a couple bits of information to make you feel more comfortable starting to utilize some of it on your own. All right. I hope everybody has a wonderful evening, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one or in the next live class. All right? So this is Chris Anderson signing out. Have a great day. Thank you.